Hi guys, it's me, Jack, from the Social Yet Distance podcast. We'd like to thank you for coming by today. We got a really special show with Westley Heine, who is the author of Busking Blues, Recollections of a Chicago Street Musician, and Squatter through Roadside Press in 2022. A short story collection, 12 Chicago Cabbies in 2021, and a volume of poetry called The Trail of Quetzalcoatl in 2016. He is featured twice at the Green Mill Poetry Slam in Uptown Chicago and is the new host of the Poetry Mic Open Mic at the Gallery Cabaret in Bucktown every fourth Saturday. Most recently, Roadside Press has released his new poetry collection entitled Street Corner Spirits, audio excerpts of which are now available on most streaming services under the same title. He's been a taxi dispatcher, a roadie, a deliveryman, a squatter, a street musician, a grocery clerk, a chambermaid, a novelist, a painter, and a metalhead, and a Boy Scout, and an insurance investigator, jailbird, farmhand. He has sold tickets to the symphony, sold plasma, been unemployed, and also been a filmmaker. Life is always creating new characters inside of him, but always he's the writer. He's rambled from Wisconsin to Chicago, Europe, Texas, Mexico, California, everywhere in between. Let in the light, let out the fire. You can get to Westley at Instagram, Westley Heine. Today we're going to be talking about cloud watching in the Inferno. It's his next work. There will be some links attached in the description, and that's why we're here today. Cloud Watching is the Inferno, a collection gathering the best of the pieces that author Westley Heine has written between 2022 and 2024. The poems and short stories are set in the past and future, using surreal imagery and dark humor to capture the contemporary and existential angst of life in the 20s. Full of colorful, hard-nosed characters, themes include heartbreak, AI, sex, not necessarily in that order, death, America, insecurity, poverty, religion, ecological collapse, disease, alcoholism, madness, and space travel, and lots of other fun and insightful topics. You will really enjoy his work. I love Westley and I love his work, and I wholeheartedly encourage you to pick up the new book as well as Busking Blues and Street Corner Spirits, and I'm going to include some links to all of those. So let me bring in Westley. Good afternoon, Westley Heine. How are you, buddy?
Doing good, Jack. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to have you here today, and I'm excited to talk about the new book. I'd like to dig in a little bit more about our history. I think you and I have become really good friends, and one of the things that I value about that the most is that I see you always out there supporting other people and other artists and poets, and no matter what their craft might be. And that's, the sense of community, and that's what social distance is all about. And that's why we hang in dark places and lurk in places we don't want to be sometimes, like Facebook. And those things bring us together. And I think the word does that, but it's that common love of the arts and humanity, I think, that brings it all together. And I think that supporting each other in all of our endeavors is the most important thing we could do. So buy merch.
Yeah.
So tell me how you from the time you and I met. I mean, we had the first couple of books, Subway, and I can't remember. I don't have them in front of me, but the first couple of books that were, there was a lot of music orientation. There's a lot of living on the streets. How are we? Let's talk about those books a little bit for us, for the audience, and then what's the progression been from that way of thinking and that way of writing into what's new?
Sure. Sure. So yeah, I'm glad to see you again, my friend. When you dropped from the cloud, I had a few poems out here and there, And I want to thank you up front, and make everybody aware. It's because of your podcast and for you inviting me on so early in my platform. Um, it made me aware of the community of independent presses. Made me aware of people like Dan Denton, who has become my
Yeah.
friend, who is featured at my poetry open mic here in Chicago. Made me aware of John Dorsey and Jason Ryberg in Missouri, who have become my friends and supporters. Featured at my show in Chicago, let me stay with them when I was living out of a car in crossing Missouri, you know. Um, and probably most importantly, Michelle McDonald,
Obviously, yeah.
because when we first spoke, I had uh, maybe one poetry book from 2016. The Chicago Cabbies
Hmm.
book had just come out, short stories, and learning and meeting Michelle um, was key because she in 2022 picked up my novel Busking Blues about being a street musician in Chicago during the bad old days. And you, sir, were on the ball and made me aware of her open submission period. And it's a dream come true to get. I've been writing novels since high school, and it's like anything else. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And finally, someone took the time to package a novel and put it out, and I'm not quitting my day job. Well, I'll talk about that later. But it's it did change my life in a way. It's having a book out is its own currency. It made it much easier to do readings when I want to. I'm selling books. I got my own poetry open mic at the Gallery Cabaret, which is a place I love here in Chicago. And so I just want to thank you for the community that you've started and making me aware of the independent press and the whole scene that of these people on Facebook and everything. I've realized the poetry world is kind of small, and everyone kind of knows each other. It's coast to coast and international too, and so I just want to thank you for that, sir.
Well, I I aim to take no real credit for that other than to say that you're the shining example of how this community is designed to work. The social distance is a place where we want to make sure the banned books live if they continue to be banned. They're the places, it's the place that if you want to find out something about Bukowski or, any of the other poets we consider whatever, um, you can go there and learn. You can, find a place to meet other people and poets and artists who can collaborate with you. And then most of all, there's the open communication and fire starting in the brain that happens amongst artists just naturally. And I see that come together, and that was kind of the vision. So, in return, I would say thank you for being the shining example of grasping what a hold of this vision is really all about, because I'm not sure people get it. A lot of times it appears that Jack's just trying to sell a bunch of shit and hawk stuff to people. That's not the goal. I have to survive and I have to live and I have certain things that I have to deal with that the average person doesn't. But that's not the purpose. The purpose isn't to live. The purpose is to leave a legacy of some sort where people will be hanging out one day when I'm long gone, talking about, oh, that guy Jack, who brought us all together. That's, you know, that's my mission. So, you know, again, I appreciate you grasping that idea. And I think it's part of that street attitude that people like us develop, that survival instinct where we know where we're safe and we're comfortable. And I hope that this it's not just a podcast, it's not just a video channel, it's a lot more than that. And I appreciate you jumping on, in with both feet and trusting your work and trusting the people that may have come across you by knowing me and trusting them enough to know that you can hand them what's yours and they can polish it up and put it where it needs to be. And you get
Yeah.
to have fun in the process. So thanks for that. And, all I can say to anybody that's listening is, follow that example. If you're a writer, poet, artist, or just a hanger on, I don't care. It's the words that matter and it's the message and it's stimulating that thought in your mind. And to some degree, I'd like to be able to offer the safety that those things are always going to be there. We know that may not be the case based on current days, but that's the thought anyway. And I think the larger and louder we get with that, the easier it's going to be to do that. And there's lots of other people that are doing the same thing. So,
Yeah.
I just unification of all that later as well. So, and then,
Well, I
people,
really have a success story, and in my opinion, that this is a success story from when we first spoke back in 2021 to now it's 2025, and you know it's a very nebulous thing, but the cause and effect is right there because of you made me aware of this scene. Before that, um, I would publish a poem here and there. I started to notice, that if the poem was really short, editors would put it in because it's easy to format. Like, are you even reading the fucking thing? And but here I met people, and we're all on Facebook, and we're all waving our books around, and you got to get over the shameless self promotion thing and the
right.
introvert thing as an artist, but everyone that I've met through you and the Punk Conscious Press people and the people I already mentioned are, yeah, we're hustling, but we're genuine at the same time,
Good. Exactly
and
right.
I've kind of
Exactly right.
learned to I've learned a lot from you and everybody, and yeah, I'm just really thankful to finally have some, I feel like finally people are liking what I'm doing, and I have a voice, and it's being heard to a certain extent. And
Well, and then, the further goal of that too, and I hope that this has been the case for you. I would imagine it probably is based on your history. But, we are all on Facebook and we are all waving our books around and we all have an extremely limited audience. So part of the theory is that if we put it all in one place and it gets known for exposing and making those words available, and there's bits and pieces and videos and things to back those things up, then we've introduced those same books because you know how it works. I mean, John Dorsey sells a shit ton of books, but it's pretty much the same people that buy them all the time. It's a closed-in audience. So the idea from where I sit is let's blow that audience wide open. Because if you compare Facebook, let's say, to Instagram, where there's thousands of people with poet in their name, you know, not that that's good or bad. I'm just saying it's a unified place where we can go and expand those audiences. And maybe there's more sales, maybe there's not, but that fire that lights us up stays stoked, you know and we do that for each other, and we do that for those that are coming in, and the words live, and that's the whole point, to
yeah,
me anyway, is that the words are there when we need them, in 100 years from now when we need them, and I don't know how to guarantee that part, but I know how to put this piece of it together, and it's people like you that make it work, so I appreciate that. And we could go all day long about how great I am, but we hear about the books, man, and because I've had the experience of reading some of your work, talk to me a little bit about like Busking and the Cabbies book, um, just to give the audience a little bit of a background on you as a writer and that progression from where we are before we jump into the new book.
okay. Well, so the uh, 12 Chicago Cabbies is a series of short stories from my time as a cab dispatcher, um, based on real stories I would hear from my cab drivers as they were hustling in the streets and making money, getting robbed, characters that they would encounter, and their characters themselves. And so that was a modest collection of short stories, and the short stories are kind of interconnected.
Yeah.
Um, and then Busking Blues is a novel. It's a autobiographical novel. Um, the names are changed to protect the guilty, and a lot of the names are the same to preserve the different
History.
local artists that appreciate the shout out, and blues musicians in Chicago. Um, and it's about my time, where I was young and completely threw myself to the muse, a squatter on the west side, do my best I can to, as a street musician, make a living doing odd jobs, at a grocery store. And during the recession, it takes place in 2010, and kind of my adventures, and um, every other chapter or so is meeting somebody on the street and writing a song for them based on their problems. So, like, I had the sign that said, "Tell me your story, and I'll write you a blues song." So there's little vignettes of characters. A lot of them, no, all of them are true, you know. And that's what's amazing, because life is stranger than fiction often. So, yeah, a lot of the stuff is from real life. It's a lot of front lines of America, working uh, class struggles, you know. Um, and the poetry is a lot of that too. Again, when we first spoke in 2021, you had the good nature to read my unpublished poetry manuscript, and we read some of them on that interview. Um, and in 2023, that became Street Corner Spirits. So again, I appreciate you, reading that. Most of those poems were unpublished at the time, and and us discussing that one. That one is the one where the poems stand on their own, but they're organized in a kind of autobiographical way. Where the first section was like poems about youth and being a kind of a delinquent in Wisconsin, and then things from my 20s in Chicago and Mexico City, and uh, traveling across America to California, and then adult life. And then the last section, when that book finally came out, was um, basically a lot of stories of the pandemic years. So that got me the 2023. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's one of those common themes that you and I struck early on was that, that I write from my own perspective in most cases. And in most cases, what I write began as a journal entry somewhere where I was bitching and moaning and whining about whatever. And, I never, but they were all based on my personal experience. So I had lived all of these things. And the more I wrote, and now there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 350 pieces that technically fall into one of the playlists that I have on the YouTube channel about escaping the orphanage, or the blameless. Anyway, the secret is that people don't realize is a lot of these little mini AI generated and um, you know films and videos that I put together with words are many, many, many times those exact same poems given some movement because of my own interior belief and experience that those as standalone items standing together don't make for a great book necessarily. So I'm using some tools and I'm going to make damn sure that my words get heard, whether you like it or not. And if I got to put a cartoon face on it or, an AI generated Bukowski, then that's what I'll do. I don't, because the words are what really matters. And the fact that, you know, these experiences are worthy and they need to be transmitted. And that's the way I feel about how you do with your work, in whatever format, is you take that reality and kind of run it through the ringer a little bit and shake it out clean so we can see it. And that's particularly the way I felt about things with those first two books. I mean, I love 16 Cabbies and Busking's, no, I like it equally as much. It's just a different book, but they're rooted in kind of the same thing, you
Yeah.
know, your life and its lived experiences. I'm not the metaphor guy. Yeah, I can come up with a metaphor, but I'm not going to write some esoteric poem that you're going to be able to read it and figure out it's about Taylor Swift. It's just, I don't write that way. I write from a purpose with an end goal in mind, and then I'll smack you between the eyes with it at the end, hopefully, because I'd rather you walk away and try to figure it out or figure out how it relates to you than what I meant out of it. I'm just telling my story, that's all. And it's taken me 20 years to put them in pretty enough words that I'm even putting them out there. I've never once tried to publish a book. I've asked numerous publisher friends of mine who probably would have, but I didn't feel worthy of the work compared to the stuff I was seeing around.
Hmm.
I have a little bit of a different view on that now, but I have other missions and other goals. I'm not looking to get published. I can do that myself if I want. For all that's worth. And at the same time, I can do that and lift up other poets and artists at the same time, and create that environment that I hope to create one day, where everybody's thriving and sharing and communing and whatever communities do. So yeah, I agree 100% from for what you say about those books. Um, and I think that's also one of the common themes between you and I is that, at least for me, it's hard to not write from reality. You know, I although my favorite thing to do in the world is sit somewhere in the public and watch people and come up with stories in my mind about who they are and where they came from and what they're living with and what mom and dad are fighting about and are the kids spoiled or not, and
Yeah.
whatever, because that's the way my brain works. And in that process, a lot of times my stories resurface or get re-remembered in the way it really was. So anyway, enough of my rambling. Carry on from the into, into the future, my
No,
friend.
no, it is interesting. Like, I've written some literary criticism for Beat Them. I got some articles on William Burroughs and Jack Kerouac, and in the Kerouac one, I was musing about that, about how in poetry, you know, it it was always kind of more accepted that you're doing little slices of life and more drawing from personal experience explicitly, from the romantic poets um, and it wasn't until Henry Miller and Kerouac and Celine that um, people started explicitly making memoir an art form and a nice nin. Maybe I'm wrong, but it became more accepted. I think in the mid 20th century to start breaking down those barriers of like, why do I need to mask it in fiction? I'm just going to start, you know, the Henry Miller didn't even change his name in Tropic of
Right.
Cancer. He's just Henry Miller, and you know, it's there. Everyone has a different process. I mean, sometimes poems and stories come to me or and other writers kind of out of the blue, and it feels like the feeling of the muse where it just downloads and it's few and far between, and you almost feel it's inspiration like it came from somewhere else. You almost don't want to take credit for it because it's that mysterious.
Right.
And then there's other ones where, yeah, I'm hashing out a process. I write about something that really happened. Then I'll take it to the open mic and I'll put it over the fire of the audience. And then afterwards, after performing it, I'll rewrite it because of the telepathy of how the audience responded. I'm like, well, that sentence wasn't very smooth when I read it out loud. I need to smooth those choice of words out, and other things are just fully formed, and that's a mystery. That's a mystery,
Yeah, that's unexplainable. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I have always done things that are fictional, and often the characters come to you mysteriously, or from the subconscious or collective unconscious, whatever you want to call it. I haven't published that much of it. Um, Me and a neighbor um, put out this book called Picture Book last year, which was a lot more experimental fiction. And, I was experimenting with the idea of putting it out myself, with my neighbor's help. And, basically because I wanted to keep all the money. And, but yeah, I mean, it's still, I'm working with Michelle at Roadside Press for this new one again because it's still much better to have somebody in your corner. Picture Book is a strange piece of fiction, and I put a lot of them in the free libraries around town, just because I like the idea of people finding it by chance.
Oh man, I love that. And I used to do things like I go into Salvation Army thrift store or Goodwill or something, and I had little strips like fortune cookie strips with little poems on them,
Yeah,
and I would stick them in the pockets of all the clothes so
I
people
love
get
that.
home with their new used clothes and they'd find a poem. Um, Somebody else had much bigger than myself had that idea, and I thought that's cool. I'm going to do that, and that's what I did.
Yeah, me and my friend Sid Yiddish back in 2008 were part of this poetry in bathrooms project where
I think I
yeah,
know his name.
yeah, me and him had a band called $2 Cockroach. He's a local legend, Chicago character, and
Yeah.
we put poems in public bathrooms. So you'd be sitting there doing your business, and you look up, Yeah, that was the first time
Oh, is
actually.
it I
Yeah,
say
they did.
what now?
Oh, they did an article about the poetry in bathroom project in the Chicago Reader, and that was the first time I ever got anything in print. So that was fun. But it's a poem about dropping a deuce. So that's a real great debut.
Yeah, well, there's a guy that got called Ace for half his life. I think I'll go without the deuce part too.
Deuce is wild.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because when I think about my own writing, I mean, things come out in a voice that where it appears that it might be more fictional, but it's not usually. And sometimes inspiration comes from extremely weird places. And I'll get, single lines that hit me in the fucking head and I have to write it down, and that kind of stuff. And then, take a list of phrases I put together and try to come up with something. And then, I mean, like I said, most of the stuff I've written up to this point, not I wouldn't say most, but a lot of the stuff that I've written up to this point, at least 350, were based specifically on circumstances and events that happened in my life. They may be masked some, and it may just be the vomit emotions that come from the experience. But I don't think I get inspiration. And one of the things that I've kind of deprived myself of is that back and forth with the audience, like you were describing. Um, I never did a lot of open mics. When I lived in Atlanta, I wasn't really into it. When I moved here to Florida, I came to communities where those kind of arts just weren't there. I mean, there are a couple of shows within a 50-mile radius, um, but they're local centered. There's no, I mean, it's all like, get together and read your Florida poems, kind of thing. So that's not really for me. So I didn't get the open mic feedback sometimes, and I didn't submit a lot. So I wasn't getting a lot of feedback from other places. I'm trying to purge my own soul from whatever garbage I'm carrying around. And that's exactly what it did for me. And so I'm grateful for that. And there were lessons I learned along the way that if I can put them in the right words, somebody might hear that message. And that gets back to what we were talking about when you were talking about John, and the whole purpose of socially at distance is, we all wave our books around, but we're selling them all to the same people. We got to expand that audience some, whether it's, and I, in token, that would, for me, it expands my ability to think creatively, creative, the word,
Yeah,
creatively.
creatively.
And I jump so much between left brain, right brain, creative logic, all the time that I'm halfway schizophrenic from that. So I need to find a center place, and that kind of feeds both of those mills. For a long time, it's felt like either or, and by the time it gets to paper, it's it's basically the emotions in the prettiest form possible left, you know.
Yeah,
And so I realize that my writing style is very different than most people, and it comes from different places. But that's also the exact reason why it, or any art or craft or knowledge or skill, comes from the benefit of studying and learning those things, and exposing yourself to things that may or may not be comfortable. And while I was doing certain things, the uncomfortable part was the part I didn't really do. You know, I never got on stage enough to really feel that stage fright. I didn't try to publish and get turned down enough, or accepted ever, and part of that is my own hubris for knowing I got the technical skill to print my own fucking book if I want. You know, I know how to do that. I know how to publish it, and
yeah,
I've bothered to learn how to distribute and learn all these things around the business that don't actually involve writing. And I think there's people that, there's a place for that as well. Um,
yeah. That's what I did at first. I used to print my own.
yeah, I mean,
Pad.
there's nothing I think most anybody does at this point. Because, who's going to go get a Random House book with a big fat salary and, advance and all your expenses paid? It just don't happen. So you print your own books and you get to keep more of the money, then fine, as far as I'm concerned. The point is, what do you do with it then? How do we get it where it needs to be? And I'm not big for being locked into the accepted channels always.
Yeah, I
I'll,
sell more books doing live events.
right.
Especially when Busking came out, I was hustling. Like I would, not just the open mics, but do readings. I bust out the guitar again to promote the book about being a street musician, and I do poems between the. I'm sorry, I do songs between the excerpts of the book, and I'd even carry copies of the book in my coat. So if I talk to somebody at a restaurant or at a bar, and they're like, "Hey, what do you do?" Um, Out comes the book. I'm a writer, and then it's under their nose, and pretty soon they're buying it. And
Yeah,
um,
I could, I could very well see that would be the case, and I get that same thing from everybody. I mean, anybody who sells any books, I like the way Dorsey does his marketing with packaging and selling
yeah,
packages. I
I
think
take
that's a
notes from
very,
him.
yeah,
He's got that
it's very smart.
subscription idea.
Yeah, it's an excellent way to do it and get your words out there. Um, yeah, I just think that. I mean, the accepted channels aren't, and everybody, like Fran, for example, I mean, I know that she sells the majority of her books in England, when she's out on the road somewhere.
Yeah,
And, she does shows in Ireland, shows in, pretty much all
Yeah.
over the UK.
I mean, even if you land
And
an agent or get that random house contract, you're still expected to go out there and hustle, and
well, yeah,
you know,
and you still are expected to carry a suitcase full of books and
yeah,
I mean, all that
it's
shit.
okay with
Because they're
me.
not. I mean, back in the day, they may have had somebody who took care of all that shit. They don't do that now, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, they're scaled back, but yeah, I'm
I
a
mean, unless you're
carpetbagger.
Stephen King or something,
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, this summer it's not announced officially yet, but um, I'm very honored that uh, Mr. P.W. Covington
hmm
has invited me to represent Chicago on his Route 66 Poetry Festival in New
Cool.
Mexico. So, that kind of makes me feel like I've been accepted or have arrived. And, uh, and it's uncanny because I do write about Route 66 in some of my cross country work. And then I'm going to join Mr. Mark Lippman with his merry band of poet pranksters um, on a bus to the West Coast doing readings. He's this year's Beat Poet Laureate.
Right.
So yeah, I'm gonna be carpetbagging, doing readings, and
That,
yeah,
I mean, there's nothing that sounds more attractive to me than being able to do that, actually. Um, one of my secret desires is hop in a van or something and just, start here. At some point I'd go back through Atlanta, but New Orleans all the way west, hit every single place I need to be, hit Chicago on the way back, you know, places in Asheville and other, known places where maybe even New York,
yeah.
um,
I
because I
mean, you
mean
got yeah,
we all don't have a lot of time, and I pushed that one off for a long, long time, and there's way too many people out there that I know way too well, considering the fact I've never met them, and that there's
yeah.
lots of people out there I'd like to go get or give a bear hug to for sure. That would be you too, Mr. Heine.
Yeah. I mean, it's seasonal. I mean, I in the you got to stay inside, pull the shade, and write most of the time. But then, summertime, you got to get out there and try to sell some books, and I got to do it now because, sleeping in a bus is going to get harder and harder. I like my bed. I like my own food,
Right?
I like pulling the shade and writing, but
I hear you, but
mm,
at some point it does you do yearn to get out a little bit if you're like me. I'm a wandering soul and I feel like I'm in prison half the damn time. So um, a trip like that sounds very appealing to me. Um, and it'll happen, it's just a matter of time and money. Same
yeah,
old, same old.
when you do put a book out, you think you'll do a version like the one that you sent me, the Emotional Orphan, where you got the visual art that goes with each piece.
Yeah, that was the very first thing I ever published. That was a broadside book, was the idea behind that. There are, I see any published, I mean, I actually have a three chapbook series in mind. And part of what's going on with the playlist on YouTube is to kind of premiere that and see what the response is. And then the next phase would be for me to settle on the appropriate artwork. I mean, I'm doing photography and all kind of crazy art all the time, and I have a particular theme that I've already laid out for the book. It's just a matter of arranging the art and determining exactly what's going to go in the books and what order. It's all centered around the idea of the emotional orphan, and the orphanage is kind of like the hub, like becoming an orphan, becoming the emotional orphan, being the emotional orphan, and then escaping the orphanage is the theory. So, or that's the plan. So, and I've got the words to do it. It's just sitting down and doing it. And right now, I've got my head in this, social distance so far that um, I don't see that as a high priority because I can always put the poems out there. even if they move, or even if it's just a picture I pick, because I could do the same thing and it wouldn't be in print, but then I could sell broadsides or something to go along with it, that kind of thing. It's all kind of up in the air as far as my own work. The trip, however, that's just because I want to see people and do some events. I mean, I got plenty of words to stand on the stage if that's what I got to do, and I'm not bashful, obviously, but I'm more prone to make an ass of myself, actually. But
Me too.
but there's a lot of cities I haven't been able to do that in that I'd like to see. So Chicago's way high on the list. The guys in Ohio are way up on the list. I got friends in Pennsylvania that are way on the list. And of course, LA and Oakland, all those guys. So, and then there's the desert critters too, as well. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, I've made some really good friends and I'd like to be able to be with them and feel the energy that I've been, sucking through the computer all this time for the past 20 years.
Yeah. I feel that I have been able to give back, as you talk about, you know, connecting with the community by having my open mic in Chicago. I
Mhm.
encourage all styles, even if it's not my cup of tea, all
Right,
free expression. I don't care if it's, sonnets or slam or beat poetry or rap. You know, I'm not gonna. My show is not a niche. It's just
right.
you sign up, do your thing. Um, and I've been able to help traveling poets. Um, again, our friends like Jason Ryberg and Dorsey and Dan Denton and all other poets on the road are coming through. And I'm really proud that my crowd, you know, when we pass the hat, they throw down for gas money, and poets are selling books, and they can make it to the next town. It's a beautiful thing, and you would be more than welcome. You know, yeah.
Oh man, I'll hop in the back of that van any day of the week. Just slam on the brakes at the curbside, buddy. I'm there.
Yeah, man. I
So
want to go back
let's talk.
to
Yeah,
what you
let's
were.
talk about the new book. Yeah.
Sure, sure. Yeah, like going back to what you were saying about you know, um, drawing a lot of things from life. Um, it's kind of an interesting question. Like, uh, some people, think that if you just write about what life hands you, you know, that it's not as creative as just making up another universe. It's kind of interesting if you are bearing witness to what life is really happening and the realities that we all relate to. It's almost as if like you're the universe or life itself is creating. I mean, it's like the diary of the world. So it is creative in a way. So you know maybe you're not just writing about yourself, but you're bearing witness to what's really happening, and that is, it's like the universe is creating it. Maybe I'm getting a little abstract
Yeah.
here, but I think
No, no, you're
interesting
absolutely
question.
right though, because I'll give you an example. With some of the things that are going on with, let's say, the United States government, for example. You know, I I've seen all kind of poem challenges and write a poem for resistance and blah blah blah. And when I attempt to sit down and do that, it's virtually impossible because I'm so emotionally connected and freaked out by what's going on that I can't even like put it into words. I think that my whole process is just longer than everybody else's. It takes me longer to process things,
No,
or I
I got
just
to digest
addicted.
things too when they come in.
I think I'm addicted to the ickiness of it all, though, and I like that. I have to get through that muck first, and then see the truth, and then maybe be able to write about it.
Yeah, I actually kind of like don't care for topical poems. Like I'll go to open mic. Sometimes poets are, and God bless them, but they're just pulling the headlines and then writing a poem about it. But it's not really a
Right,
poem; it's
right.
a
See,
political
that's a
speech.
different thing. Yeah,
You know,
that is exactly why I can't write at that point because the headlines have been written, and everybody knows what's going on.
Yeah,
And I
you
don't
can't
have
just
any real
regurgitate it.
well, and I don't have a flowery term for genocide, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Now there are political poets that do it well, that put it in a spin, that use a
Absolutely.
metaphor that they make it creative. It's not just regurgitating the news. So there's an exception to every rule, and there are no rules. So
Well, I like when it comes to revolution and that kind of stuff, it doesn't get better in the 60s and 70s, Gil Scott Heron and people like that. But, look at some of the memes that are floating around now, and you got, Euripides said this and it fits perfect. It's like, or
yeah,
whoever, Longfellow said blah, 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 blah,
or
and
George Carlin.
it's all true. We exactly, we're nowhere where we haven't been before. It just feels worse, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know. I
and
take it real personally because I'm an old man.
yeah, my friend Dmitry Samarov
Mhm.
is a great writer. He's a purist about in his writing that he doesn't write fiction. It's all life is stranger than fiction. And
Mm.
he did a review for the Chicago Reader of my book Busking Blues, and we had an interesting discussion um, about that where he liked all the chapters that were obviously taken from my real life. Um, the climax of the book is a dream sequence that kind of puts all the themes through my subconscious, and I'm having this kind of nightmare of, getting arrested for busking on the street without a license, for all the things that could go wrong, getting robbed, you know, love concerns, my dead friend, all the things kind of. And he's like, I liked it all except for the fictional dream sequence, and it begs the question, like the, and I respect his opinion, and he's kind of right, but it begs the question, like, aren't all dreams made up? If you really dreamt them, are they fiction or are they real? and and
Right, right.
and it's, I'm kind of joking, but um, the new book, there is more fiction, but I stand firm that the feelings that the stories are based on are real, even though I might have set them, like one story called "Shot of Mercy" takes place in the pandemic from 1919 during the Spanish flu
Mm.
pandemic, and so it takes some of those authentic feelings of the latest pandemic, and I just set them in a fictional setting. Or I got a lot of stories dealing with like male insecurity. You know,
Mhm.
you write what you know, right? And
Yeah, well, I don't know anything about that, buddy.
yeah, these kind of relationship stories. There's one in the new book which is called um, "The Sphinx of Silverton," which I wanted to write a feminist story set in a whorehouse. And
Right.
I was like, that sounds like a challenge, because I was living in New Mexico at the time, and I was getting fascinated with the Old West, and it was actually quite easy because I come to learn that some of the earliest women in the Old West were prostitutes who were many of them very independent, ran their own businesses, and they were actually a lot more freer than the women back east, you know,
Right.
and so that was interesting. And
That is interesting.
yeah, and
I just wonder if sometimes the word fiction might be replaced by something like metaphorical, because you're taking the same experiences and thoughts and emotions and you're throwing them in a different setting. And I would assume that most writers are going to pick that setting based on some vision of that scenario. So that vision could be anything, but the story could remain the same no matter where you put it.
Exactly.
So it's almost, it feels almost metaphorical would be a better word than fiction, because it's not really fiction. It's, you know, a fictionalized version of telling a tale, or it's a version of telling a tale in whatever creative manner you might, and then, closing it up with that perspective. So I don't know. It's just, that's the thought that struck me when you said that, was maybe fiction is not what he's describing, because I don't know. Uh, I'm not to, I'm certainly not qualified to rain on his opinion, but it's just an afterthought really was you told me that story.
Yeah.
So we go through all this to get to the new book, and
Sure.
tell me how this one comes together.
Well, like I said, it's called Cloud Watching in the Inferno, and it's kind of the best short stories and poems that have gotten published, some unpublished, um, in the last few years. So it's basically 2022 to now.
Mhm.
The Shot of Mercy story, Pure Sleeves Press put out as a nice little chapbook. Another story called My Old Lady got a pushcart nomination, which made me feel good. Um, the short stories, I think, are the star of this collection, but the thing about short stories are that they're not very short. So I was thinking maybe I could read
Well,
some of
yeah,
the poems.
we definitely want to hear some. So you pick whatever you think's appropriate. I got nothing, no opinions really about that. I trust your judgment.
Okay. Yeah, let me do the short one first.
Okay.
See how you like it. It's called Honky Tonk Angels. This is about traveling. This is a place I found in the Texas Panhandle when I was heading back east. Honky Tonk Angels spin in a galaxy of rhinestone. Swirling, twirling, they dance as the beer goes flat, as the rain weeps through dank walls. The singer howls, the pedal steel cries, drums table tap codes, and the bass beats blood. Water damaged faces warp, hips dip, stitches strain. They parade like automatons, but they will it so. What are their bodies saying in this language without words, in this silent rhythm? They are the shadows of the music. Divine dancers tangle the question between their legs. It means everything and nothing. Whale songs, bird songs, mating songs. Spiders wave back at the Milky Way. There is no meaning except they are alive. They are not the meaning of life, they are life itself. Some sweat, hobble, dresses fray like blooming petals. Tonight they will sleep well, feet and shins worn. Adrenaline dreams of pairs, squares, spasmous sparks, glances, glimpses, teeth flash in space. They are not the question, they are the answer.
Nice. Nice. You just, a lot of people when they write, particularly in a poetic form, have a tendency to stay real tunnel vision, and you almost feel static when you read it. But when I read your work, particularly the poetry part of it, and hearing you read it, it's moving. It's telling a story, and we're walking through it, and it's a different experience for me than something, I don't know what the word would be, but it it feels like it moves, and it's not just static words sitting there waiting for you to figure out what it means. It's like when you're done, you understand. And that, I think that's an amazing ability that maybe you haven't heard before, because that's the way it's kind of always made me feel. A lot of people, I read them, and at the end I'm like, what the hell? You
It's
know?
like a puzzle,
And
yeah.
I don't ever feel that way. I might have to pick apart the details to understand, but that's not a chore or a task, or, like I have to pick up a dictionary to learn a new word to be able to understand your meaning. It feels like, and that would be static to me. That's like, okay, I got to this part, now I got to do some research to understand the next part, and it gets very difficult and boring.
Yeah,
I,
it's like
I
the
was
old thing, like where they say like don't say show in writing,
right.
and you're a
And that's
visual
the way
artist
it
too.
feels.
Yeah.
When I close my eyes, especially, or when I'm looking away and all I heard was your voice, was I had this feeling like I was moving. There was a tunnel, like as in protection or as in focus, but it was moving. You were moving through that tunnel as opposed to being, static in front of a billboard trying to understand what it's saying.
Okay.
I really like that. And I think that's probably, I would say it's a gift that you may or may not even be aware of the way you write, because that's the way I feel about a lot of your work. And
Yeah.
that's, I mean, it's a gift. It's the bottom line,
Thanks, Jack. I think a lot of it comes from starting as a visual artist, and as a
Mhm.
visual artist yourself, you might understand this, that like you're trying to use the words to paint a picture, and
Right,
and as soon as you realize that human beings think in pictures, not necessarily in abstract concepts, and
right.
that helps. It's like the old.
Well, and I would assume too that your musicianship as well helps feed into that as well, because it's kind of like that movement is the same as a soundtrack, you know. And when you describe the story about the Old West, there's a certain music that kind of goes along with that in my head,
Yeah.
as opposed to, nails going down a chalkboard or something. And I think that it's kind of those unification of those things and the natural, ability just to write. Um, I think that blends together so perfectly in your case and in all the work that you do. I mean, f label it what you want, fiction or poetry. You know, I call everything I write poetry. It probably isn't. Some of it's just flat out storytelling, you know. Um, but yours feels like poetry if it's meant to be poetry, or it feels like a story if it's meant to be a story, and it's never static. There's always, I write mine with a punch at the end. I live for the being able to smack you right at the end where you have to walk away and think about it and feel it, and then you'll understand. You don't write that way. You take me along with the journey, and that's a freaking amazing thing. I appreciate that when I read your work. I really do.
Yeah. Thanks, Jack. Yeah, you got to have an ear, and the musicality for all writers is to come into that, especially if you're going to write something that takes place in the Old West. People talk differently. There's a certain rhythm, there's different rhythm to the words, and different vernacular. And yeah, you got to be aware of that. I Yeah, I'm gonna put some of these to music and release it at the same time as the book. The book's coming out in April, and I'll put out some where I'm reading along with some of my musician friends to have that element. Sometimes,
Well,
yeah, like poetry should speak for itself, and it doesn't always have to have a visual or musical element and be extra. But I enjoy doing it, and the hope is that you know doing these mixed media things that we do, you know pulls people into the book, or makes them more aware of the book, or if you don't have time to sit down, you can put this on while you're in your car. You'll be on YouTube and
right.
listen to it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way it's designed. And my feeling is that movement, or that film image that goes along with that part of it, all it's designed to do really is tickle your brain and all your senses. And the more tickled you are in those areas, the more likely you are to go. I mean, it's marketing for lack of a better term, but it's also carrying the message the way it was designed, and offering something of value up front so that you dig deeper. And that's all any of us could ever ask for, and
Yeah.
what most of us whether you're a writer or not, should be asking for, is
Yeah.
something better,
I mean, I'm a
a different
writer.
way.
I'm a writer first, and even before I played music, I was a writer who would occasionally write songs, and my fear is that people will be like, oh, here's a musician who's trying to be a writer, when it's really the other way around. And but so I don't want to cheapen the literature platform by doing it, but since I enjoy doing it, and why not? Why not put out a spoken word musical accompaniment along with it too?
Oh, I agree 100%. I mean, people will sit down and watch a, 4-hour movie and not think twice about it. So if I've got enough to keep you for, 10, 15, 45 minutes, I've done a real good job. And compared to, oh, marketing one chapbook every year to the tune of, $5 profit a book if you're lucky. So,
Yeah, man.
and, I mean, my whole thing, and it's been really prevalent lately too in my life, is labels are just shit. Okay, you're a poet. Okay, you're a writer. Okay, you write
Yeah,
fiction. Okay, I don't care. I mean, whatever you call it, it's art and it's your craft and you're proud of it and you want to share it. If I like it and I'm proud of it and I want to share it, I should. And so, it's that one-to-one, limitation that's been taken away because you can expand that audience just like we talked about earlier. And that's tickling those little special places in our hearts and minds that make us want to dig deeper. It's my job is to try to get to that part at least.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you,
I'm all for being multimedia and trying different approaches. But yeah, when you are trying to get known for something, I don't want to confuse people either.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
I want my writing is what I'm actually good at.
right.
And
Exactly.
but I do love music.
That's why I call myself a con man or a carnival barker and not a writer.
You're a good writer, Jack.
I try, that's all I can tell you. But I've always been good at bringing people together, and I've always been good at carrying a positive message, even though I'm the grumpiest old fart you ever meet. But um, ultimately, my goal is to help everybody get to where they want to be, and I don't really have any investment in that other than to do what helps. And I think I've found a mix that helps, and it works on a personal level, and it works on a business level, and it works on a, you know, universal level as well. So that's what writers do. you know.
Yeah,
So call me what you will. I don't care. You know. I just think labels are dangerous because they come with preconceived notions or ideas. That's why you want to be a writer and not a musician who becomes a writer. They all those labels come with a preconceived notion or idea that you either have or that somebody else you expect somebody else to have. So that holds me back, by not pursuing those things. And that's where we need to put our energy, I think. So
yeah,
rock on, brother. You're doing what you need to do. And I'm happy to be able to support anybody who's willing to do the work to make their own life and the people around them better. That's, I mean, what else am I going to do? My football career ended a long time ago, so, and I'm never going to get that job at New York Ballet. So,
wanna want me to read a couple more things?
yeah, yeah. Let's hear some of it.
So I'll do some more of the poems. The Some of the short stories in the blurbs that for the new book, they've been calling it like sci-fi surrealism. Like more than one blurber picked up on that. So yeah, even though I'm painting a picture, it's often kind of it's from the subconscious. It's cloud
Mm.
watching in the Inferno. I feel the meaning of the book is kind of just the collective angst of the last few years, and even though the world's on fire, I'm still looking at the strange shapes in the smoke, and bearing witness to that. This one's called Bullfight at the Supermarket. This was in Black Noise, which is a cool magazine.
That's a cool mag, man.
Yeah, yeah, I can show that. It's pretty cool. My friend Patty Feinerman, who's a rock and roll photographer at Summerfest in Milwaukee, he's taken pictures of any great actor you've ever seen before. He did. We're like in a subterranean basement. So,
Sweet.
Bullfight at the Supermarket. Every time we bite, chew, and swallow, it's a sacrifice. Wide eyes of innocent animals crucified. Every time we breathe in and out, it's a sacrifice. Vegetation resuscitates the world as we plow it under. In each breath, there's a crucifixion. If you open your arms, if you open your eyes, your legs, your mouth, you are at once guilty and innocent. Guilty by consuming, and innocent by the need to consume. Flowers grown and flowers picked, sacrificed and sanctified, crucifying and crucified, living to die, dying to live until words are just twilight. The devil is released into the arena. Before the crowd, the priests spar with the beast. Spears, shish kebab, veils, blindfold, horns pulled back, revving in submission. Slaughtered by a double-edged sword, the masses cheer. They have been saved from nature once again. They give a standing ovation on two legs, above it all, for now. One thing for another. Bullfights and fur coats, steak dinners and leather jackets, rib cages and wings, breasts and twins, lungs and lyrics, eclipsed by metaphors and symbols, but the crucifixion is everywhere. I guess that one is a little more abstract.
No, but I get it.
Yeah.
I get it indeed. Um, yeah, I'm gonna reserve comment on that. I mean, I like to have it in front of me, but the flow and the rhythm was just perfect for the story that was being told. I really like the way you read it as much as anything else, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think it's really like a judgment kind of thing, and I'm not religious or anything, but I mean I'm using the words of the Judeo-Christian kind of symbols, um,
Yeah.
the devil, the crucifixion, all that stuff, because they're handy, But it's not about it's not you know damning us for eating animals or anything. It's just very basic thing of you know everything is a trade-off. I breathe in oxygen, out comes carbon dioxide or whatever it is. The plants and the animals have to live in harmony, and if we disrupt that harmony, things go to hell.
Well, yeah, I mean that's why I say I get the poem and I don't have any objection to it. But it's one of those I don't feel comfortable commenting about it because I need to see it and breathe it a little bit.
Yeah,
Because I mean, on first read, I agree 100%. I think it's very well said and very well spoken. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't want you or anybody else to think that I'm judging the poem at all. It's just I haven't felt it to the point where I feel confident enough to even respond because there's a lot of details in that poem that strike me in a way I'm not sure about yet.
yeah,
You
that's
know?
definitely one you probably would need to go over a couple times. It's a little more abstract.
Well, I have a background with religion that's somewhat, you know, let's say wishy-washy. Um, you know, so there's that. I have my own personal beliefs towards higher powers and beings and that, so that's in the way. So there's a lot of rearranging the furniture to be able to get the whole message, I think, sometimes. And that's kind of the way when this poem was over, it's like, okay, I get it. And then I had to take a breath and say, wait a minute, I get it, but I don't know what it is I got yet.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. That's always the risk if you're using those kind of mythic symbols, even
Mhm.
poetically, or the Carl Jung archetypes.
Right.
Because everyone has their opinions on them, and if you go around rearranging or using them to your own purposes, then it can be a juxtaposition.
Yeah, you'll find lots of criminals, but even more so, uh, knights in shining armor on their white chargers in my work, because I like to think that I'm so well put together now I could save the world, and that's a metaphor that kind of repeats itself for some unknown reason. But yeah, I definitely I want to give that one more thought because it struck a it's weird because it strikes me as very important, but it strikes me as I don't want to deal with that right now.
Yeah, yeah.
On a personal level. So whatever that is. So you can feel free to read a piece of fiction too, because that'll give me an opportunity. I can cut out a short as well, and maybe help promote the book with that as well if you want to, Wes. So don't hesitate to read whatever you want to read. Don't let the link determine how long it's going to, you know.
Okay.
I'll leave that up to you because I want the work to shine. So you pick what you think.
Um, this is one that I've been doing at readings for years. It's about um, 10, 15 years old, and I always felt it was one of my better poems, but I find when I do it on stage, everyone takes it literally. It's called The Fly, and that's fine. I finally put it out. I'm happy with it, but I I think you'll get it, and I don't like it when people over-explain their poems. They should speak for themselves. But basically, there's a fly in my room,
Mhm.
and it's not just about that. It's the room is like the Earth. It's like why are we on this planet? You know,
Gotcha.
it's a little more existential. Anyway, the fly. There's a fly in my room. It does not know how it got in. It does not know how it will get out. It does not know what out is, but it wants out. I hear its wings like static between stations. It changes pitch past my ear. It lands, a black dot on a white plain. How maddening it must be a larva and make the leap to become a fly, to have wings and 1,000 eyes, but nowhere to soar off to. He's always at the window, wanting out without knowing what out is. He throws himself against the glass. He beats his head against the glycerine, a kaleidoscope of eyes against an invisible wall, like hard air. It's bigger than the world he can see. I wonder if I should set him free. Should I open the cold glass and pop out the screen? Should I smash him out of his misery? Should I play God and hope that my friend comes back with thumbs rather than worthless wings? But it's not that simple. God, man, or fly, he's determined to get through. My friend throws himself against the glass again and again till he beats out his brains, till he loses his will. He falls on his back like dried paper, there on the windowsill with a dozen others. There is a fly in my head. Does not know how it got here. Does not know how it will get out. But it wants to fly out.
I like that. Um, I couldn't help but a memory came to me when you were reading that, and I find it quite interesting actually. The very first piece of writing story that I remember ever writing, I was probably 6 or so years old, 7 maybe,
Cool.
and it was the story of a boy who was locked in a dark room who had made friends and someone would bring him food occasionally, and he was very lonely and he made friends with a cockroach, and then the people quit feeding him and he had to go through this moral dilemma about whether to eat his friend or not.
Oh, that's messed up. I like that.
So it, I completely forgot about that until you actually started reading. I thought, wait a minute, I've heard this story before.
I'm glad you can relate.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it's a genius poem, and I definitely definitely get it. Um, why I get it is kind of funny, but I mean, it tells. I don't. There's nothing I can do to explain it. It's so clear to me. I don't know why anybody would really need that explained. And even if it is, people explaining it and over explaining and interpreting it differently. So, you know,
Yeah. I mean, I hope that it works on both levels where it's literally just about a fly in your room and that's annoying. But
right,
then you realize that the man is also a fly stuck in
right.
under the sky or whatever in life, whatever.
We're all being driven by that same buzz, in our
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
I laughingly, for many years have talked about, the sound of an alarm clock going off in my head,
Oh,
constantly
yeah.
ticking, and at some point it's going to stop. And, I joke about it because it's fucking real.
Oh, I hate dreams like that. Dreams of the alarm clock.
Yeah, exactly. Unless it's Pink Floyd, I'll give that some slack.
Yeah.
But you got to listen to the whole album. You can't just pick pieces.
Yeah, that's a whole piece. Yeah.
That does remind me of a question about your musical history. I mean, you blended it in, and I've seen some of the output from that. You've been very clear that you're a writer and not a musician, but do you see that you could be one or the other without the other?
Um, yeah. Yeah. I think being a musician, like dabbling in different mediums, informs on each other.
Hmm.
Like I said before, studying visual art helps you paint a picture with words better, or studying
Right.
video editing helps you tell a story better. Music definitely helps you have an ear for the musicality of dialogue or the rhythm while you're kind of doing a reading.
Right.
I used to read too fast because I was nervous and or trying to be as cool as the slammers or rappers. And my approach is to do the opposite.
Right.
Slow down, let the words breathe and hang in the air like smoke from the caterpillar. Like Ken Nordine would do.
Hmm.
That kind of thing. But no, I'm a writer, and sometimes I'll write songs. You know,
Yeah.
and I enjoy working with musicians. I mean, I shouldn't be so self conscious about uh, being because like you said, the heck with labels, But because my heroes like Kerouac or Burroughs they have records out. They
Sure.
collaborated with musicians and experimental soundscapes, and I love that stuff. Yeah,
I would love to see that, have it come back
yeah,
a lot more. To go back and listen to any of those records, the old Bukowski, old Kerouac, and whoever else. Some of the old stuff by William S. Burroughs. All those things are just classic in the sound of,
yeah.
of it all. Um, so yeah, I would love to see that whole genre return a lot stronger than it has. And I think that unfortunately, new mediums like mine, although it makes the same available, it doesn't offer that same nostalgia. You know,
Yeah, I don't know.
between me and you, I'm looking at something that's very interesting that might fare out. There's a company out there that makes small LPs, like mini size, and they
Oh,
fit on a regular old record player.
oh, I
And
got a record player. I want one.
yeah, I mean, I'll send you a link to the company. I can't call their name right now. Sorry, guys. But it's a unique idea, and if it might be interesting to pull together some artists and do something like that and see
Yeah,
what happens, depending on how expensive it is.
have them in your pocket. And just give them to people. Yeah,
Exactly. You talk about, yeah, exactly.
that'd be cool.
Yeah. I used to get out a business card that was, it was the CD, but it was the shape of a business card. And when I was running my business in the new media sphere, um, that's what I would give as my business card. You know, it was a mini CD that would, not the round ones, but it was shaped like a business card, and it would read them all our stuff, and connect them to our phone so we could sell them. You know,
That's neat.
it was
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, it's cool. So there's some cool things out there. I think that I'd love to see the idea of getting LPs back out there. Because I think, well, I'm an audiophile anyway. And miss not being able to hear stereo the way I used to.
Yeah. I mean, got my record player right here. It's like,
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, I got some of these are going to be, the I've recorded there. You'll see when I start putting out the spoken word
Yeah.
versions of these with music in a couple months. And yeah,
Well,
I'll
I
be
do
down
have
to
a
get it on.
playlist too, so I do have a playlist that's just all my friends and people that have been on the show and whatnot.
Oh yeah, you can
So
use my stuff. Yeah.
any of that stuff that make sure I do know, and I'll add it to the playlist. At least it'll get more views and whatnot. It doesn't do anything for me except bring more people to me because you're there. So
And vice versa. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, you know, if you have a minute, you want to go through the YouTube, check the playlist and see where you fit, and we'll stick that stuff in there, even if it's minute shorts, whatever.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Anything to help spread the word, and I can scratch, you can scratch, Michelle can scratch, we'll get this thing done.
And I'm interested in because I looked into doing vinyl. There's a company here in Chicago called Plastic Smash, I think it's called, but it's expensive to put out a
Yeah, I don't think
record.
it's
Yeah.
cheap. I don't
Yeah.
think it's real cheap, but
Yeah.
that's what I'm in. I found the company, and now I'm to the point where I'm doing some research to find out, is it a feasible thing? Because I don't have a bunch of money to spend on that kind of stuff yet. However, if you'll join me in the network community on Buy Me a Coffee and become a monthly subscriber, that might help.
Yeah.
We can do fun things like that and send you a CD and with a business card or an album or something one day. But anyway, that's the carnival barker in me coming out.
Yeah. That's a good deal. I got one more, and
Yeah,
this
I was
is
gonna say, let's do one more and wrap it up, Bob.
all right. This is apropos to what we're talking about in many ways. Um, I'm using the persona or the symbol of the devil. This is called "The Devil is Getting Old." We're all getting old, and this one came to me pretty much fully formed last July, and I performed it with my guitar player the next day at my open mic. It's basically unchanged. And it could very easily just be a song. Anyway, the devil is getting old. No more rebellion in heaven. No more morning star. No more trying to be God. The devil is getting old. No more hooves on rooftops. No more licking flames. No more slam dancing against bone. The devil is getting old. No more leather wings. No more flutes on hillsides. No more betting against the odds. It's getting old. No more riding waves of eyes. No more Jesus naked hippie cult. No more playing the record backwards. The devil is getting old. No more spiraling ram horns to oblivion. No more going stag into the herd. Just moaning stalagmites of memory. It's getting old. As he sulks at the center, as he scratches his bristled balls, as he is crowned with shadow, the devil is getting old. And minions whisper that the surface is ripe with war, famine, orgies of blood. But he'd rather stay home tonight. It's getting old. People are gullible, stupid, vain, but let them be. We're all so lost. He doesn't play with the souls he already has. The devil is getting old. He's got an altar of skulls he's fucked. Now he's resting on his nut. Deflated, a has-been, a never was. The devil is getting old. He isn't angry anymore. He's blown off the steam that fuels God's damnation machine. He's getting old. These days, humanity is evil all by itself. They don't need him anymore. The student has become the master. The devil is getting old. He's sick of tricks. He's sick of masks. He wants you to know the real him. The devil is getting old. He's sick of running. He's ready to face the music. Would they dare forgive even him? The devil is getting old. No more eyes aglow. No more fiery furnace passion. Just this heart frozen in ice. The devil is getting old. As he spins in space, as he grins a crescent moon, free at last, alone in the void, the devil just wants to go home. Hey.
And I like that one too. I think the devil is a label.
Yeah.
I really do, but we definitely don't need him anymore. That's the important part, I think.
Yeah, you could take it literally, like it's the story of a demigod, or you could take it as like the symbol of the rebel growing up, or both, or maybe all this evil bullshit is getting old. Forget about it. I don't know.
And it continues, I think, because we continue to try to label it as something that it's not. That's why one of the reasons I don't like labels is, this is so-and-so's fault because they don't meet this moral tender, or you automatically equate to this level of evil because you whatever, None of it seems to really make sense. The scale is always in flux, and at its core is the same thing that's at the core of everything, and that's our humanity. I mean, that's what we do. We have instincts that we're born with, and then we trash them for the rest of our lives. We spend the rest of our lives trying to get back to where we already were, and it's so the label becomes the excuse, or the blame or whatever. And that's Jack's theory on absolutely everything about nothing. Wes, I always like talking to you so much, man, and I promise that I need to do a better job and would like to do a better job and will attempt to do a better job at just communicating outside of these cameras and such. Um, and I always want you to keep me informed on what you got going on, and I'll help to spread the word in any way I possibly can. But we're going to close it up, and I just want to say thanks, and I appreciate you being here. Sit tight. I'll say goodbye to the audience, and then we'll be done for the day. Okay, hang
Yeah,
tight.
yeah, you're looking good, Jack, and I enjoy talking to you too.
Thanks. Say goodbye to the audience, Wes. They're the ones who are going to buy your books. All right, guys. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us, me and Westley today. Please take the time to go and visit his locations. I'm going to put all the links to specific books of his in the chat, a little bit about his bio, more information. And then I also ask that you please like, subscribe, share anything here that you find. You'll see the links to how to support us in our endeavor. And you probably got to hear a little bit more about that today than most people have heard. So chip in, do what you can to help, and we appreciate you being here, and we will see you the next time. Thanks, guys.